Hey everyone, it's Kong again with another episode of Should You Summon? As always, I'll be presenting high-level overviews to help you decide whether this banner is worth your hard-earned vouchers and crystals. This week we've got a raid-up banner featuring Towa and Kertesz, running from June 23rd to July 6th. As a raid-up banner, you have a 40% chance to get each on-banner character, with the remaining 20% reserved for any other hero in the regular summoning pool. First up, we've got Towa. Towa is a supportive DPS whose gimmick revolves around buffs. The duration of buffs she gets from allies is increased by 1. She also gets a boost to her attack and defense depending on how many buffs she has. Her 3-cost skill lets her choose an aggressive stance or a defensive stance, then move 3 spaces and act again. The aggressive option gives nearby allies increased attack and int, lets them deal fixed damage before attacking, and speeds up their cooldowns when they defeat an enemy with a skill. The defensive stance gives nearby allies increased defense and makes them immune to fixed damage and displacement effects. She also has a 2-cost melee attack that lets her attack first if she has a faction buff, and she ignores guard if the enemy doesn't have a special effect from a faction buff. Her unique helm uses the same mechanics. If she has a faction buff, she deals plus 10% increased damage when attacking, and if the enemy doesn't have a special effect from a faction buff, she hits them with minus 15% attack and int. Finally, she has a 1-cost assist skill that copies 3 of her dispellable buffs over to an ally, then lets her move another 2 spaces and attack. So that means she has a 3-move act again and a 2-move act again, which gives her quite a good effective range as long as she has allies to target with her skills. Oh, and speaking of buffs, her art is getting a buff, with a pretty good custom art design contest skin coming out in a few months. She's a member of Langrisser Reincarnation, buffed by Ares and Hilda, Strategic Masters, buffed by Lanford and Altemuller, and Origins of Light, buffed by Dehart, Jugler, and Freya. For bonds, she doesn't unlock anyone else's bonds yet, and she needs Maya for her own defensive bond and Ares for her own attack bond. For content, in PvE, she's on faction for Phoenix and Valkyrie in the Eternal Temple, and Jormungandr and Sleipnir in Ancient Beckoning. She's currently one of the top-scoring meta picks against Jormungandr, in no small part because she can copy buffs like Attack Blessing over to your other DPS and block fixed damage. She's one of those units whose kit looks very interesting for PvP, but it requires the right kind of box or team to make everything work. She has the potential for some unexpected dynamic plays, which I like, and her multiple act again moves with the potential to ignore guard can make her feel oppressive to play against. The downside is that she can be shut down before the match even begins if you manage to pick faction buffs for your vulnerable units or just really bulky units. And next up we have Kertesz. Kertesz is a magical AoE unit. His talent gives him an option of 2 additional actions he can take every time he ends his turn. He can either apply his talent debuff, or do some AoE damage to a unit that has his talent debuff already. This debuff makes the enemy do less damage to him, and boosts his int when attacking them, and if he has his new unique hat, he also gets some healing after they attack him. If he kills an affected enemy, he turns them into a puppet who can ignore guard and spread debuffs, and again, if he has his unique hat, the puppet gets damage dealt and damage reduction buffs. His 3-cost skill is a pretty standard debuffing AoE that also heals him by 20% for each enemy hit. Among his normal skills, he has another AoE that lets him steal a buff and applies his talent debuff onto all the affected enemies. He has a skill that lets him copy the class of a targeted ally and then act again, useful for extending his range or burning off cooldowns. And he also has a Dark Reaper-like single target attack that ignores 15% magic defense and restores his health. He's a member of Langrisser Reincarnation, buffed by Ares and Hilda, and Dark Reincarnation, buffed by Bozel and Licorice. For bonds, he doesn't roadblock anyone else's bonds for now, and for his own bonds, he needs Licorice for his defensive bond and Patsir for his attack bond. For content, in PvE he's on faction for Leviar, and he's solidified his position as a key component of the top-scoring leaderboarding teams against Fenrir and Sleipnir. He's single-handedly responsible for the bulk of the damage you can do against both of those. monster. On the PvP side, he's actually a pretty threatening unit in PvP as well, kind of playing a similar role as Kruger. His faction buff options are a little bit limited, but he is able to boost himself against his selected targets, so that helps. If you're playing an AoE rush box, you'll want to think about whether you can fit him in. Alright, let's do the notes for noobs. Towa is a niche option for very specific Apex Arena boxes, but she's also a top pick for Jormungandr. So if you enjoy building a fresh character from scratch for Ancient Beckoning leaderboarding against one boss, then Towa. Kertesz is a strong meta unit for 2 Ancient Beckoning fights, which is the only PvE mode where specific character selection really matters. He's also strong in PvP in AoE-focused boxes. Even though he's not a must-have in the same way as Waitham or Lucretia or Ironblood Commander, the fact that he's good in multiple modes makes him a safe character to build if you do summon him. I think this is the 3rd rate-up banner in a row for Towa and the 2nd for Kertesz. For whatever reason, both of these characters have been allergic to Destiny guarantees so far. That'll make them relatively uncommon units for the time being. Finally, just my usual note about upcoming banners. So now that we're a week into this update, we're getting a slightly better look at what the rest of the schedule looks like. We know we still have the Yu Yu Hakusho crossover banners to come, and with the Waitham banner booted ahead to this week, it seems likely that those will get their own dedicated week. We should also get a week with the Night of Mystery, Hilda, and Rainforce Destiny banner, and it's very likely that the missing Kruger and Werner banner will come along that one in Waitham's place. The final week of the update is supposed to feature double Destiny banners with Autocrato, Maya, and Nomi, and Bozel, Luna, and Liana. The next monthly update has a couple of skippable new characters, and the very important Light of Genesis and Sissy White on separate rate-up banners, so that's something else to potentially plan for. Alright, that's it for this episode. Let us know in the Discord or in the comments below who you're summoning for and who you ended up getting. Normally, I'd be very tempted to summon either of these to help speed them along, but unfortunately this is a month where netting the 2 new characters took a big chunk out of my Trinity stash, and I've got to complete the collab collection as well, so sadly I'll be skipping so I can try to recover in time for important future banners. Thank you so much for watching, I wish you all the best of luck, and I'll catch you in the next Should You Summon. Extra special thanks of course to our Langrisser tier channel members for generously supporting the channel directly. Shout out to Levitt, Derek Gunderson, Kate Soon, Jared Portela, Jerome Meyer, Shara Ilimirius, and Harambe. If you're interested in adding your name to this list, go ahead and click that join button for information about some of the perks that I have for my supporters and channel members. Peace!